dear. How are you?
I am doing well, darling. I'm good. I'm so excited. I always get excited on these days. Like I
I
do. Like I
know.
have no energy throughout the whole week. And then Thursday comes and I'm like, yeah, you know what today is.
Yes.
Like,
Yes, I'm feeling
I
like I
know.
know. You text me. I'm like, yeah. Like, wait, she's talking to me. Like, duh, you knew that.
I
I'm
know.
out
I know.
of. It's okay.
I
But
know.
hello, everyone that is going to join us. We are waiting for people to get online. But in the meantime, I want to introduce myself. My name is Nina Carr. I am a transformational behavioral coach. What I help people do is transform their behaviors to transform their lives to reach their potential or their favorite versions of themselves. And I am proud and happy to be here today. Who are you, Jasmine?
That's a loaded question. But we won't go into that today. So
I
I'm
know,
Jess.
right?
I am an intuitive mindset coach and a light worker. So I handle and deal with all things energy, love, light, and learning. And so basically, I help people to shift their mindset so that they can walk into their true, authentic self. Yes.
Awesome. So
Uh-huh.
it's like we're so aligned, which brings us to the topic for today. Today, we're going to talk about unicorn uniqueness. This is going to be a little different today. Of course, we're going to give tips and trips and whatever, stories are shared. We're going to give our advice. However, on this particular episode, we are really going to focus on our stories and how we met and how we got here because it's pretty weird. Like, we literally just found out we have the same hairline. Like,
2 minutes
it's
ago.
weird. Right? 2 minutes ago. I was like, oh, you got that hairline too? What is happening? But what's that we are here and we are here to talk about our personal stories, and then talk about our journeys to self-discovery. We're going to talk about the power of community, how to celebrate our diversity while you're in unity with other people that are just like you. Because we do a lot of conversations on about how to find your tribe, find your tribe, find your tribe. But when do we have the conversations about when you find that tribe and how it gets weird sometimes?
Yes, it definitely gets weird. And you all know that person is like that one person who kind of stands out amongst the crowd, and you're and like I'm that one person in my group, right? So I'm that one person that stands out in the crowd. And so you think, okay, I'm the quirky one, I'm the weird one, I'm this. And then what happens when you meet someone who is equally as quirky as you and equally as stand out-ish as you? And not to say, and this is a disclaimer, everyone is unique and amazing in their own right. So I don't want people to be like, I'm not amazing. You're all amazing. But there are some people that just stand out as soon as they walk into a room, whether it be their laugh, like myself, I have a loud laugh, or just who you are, how you dress, how you talk, any of those things. So this is for those people that just naturally just can't help but be who they are and stand out just for being them. What happens when you actually meet someone who's just like you?
Absolutely. Because it's scary, it gets scary, especially when you are someone who prides yourself on being you. Like, it gets kind of harder when you really kind of know yourself because you are so in tune with yourself and you're like, I'm special, I'm amazing, and blah, blah, blah. And then you see somebody that's just like you and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm still special, but dang, she just took out my mojo a little bit. You know what I mean? It's not in a negative way, but it's kind of like, I thought it was one of one, right? And so it's so important in these, in these times to really stay true to yourself and really understand who you are. And that's what we are going to talk about today.
Yes.
And I'm excited because we're actually going to be talking about our stories on a personal level rather than just giving out a bunch of advice. So this is going to be super fun. But as always, first things first, remember that Elevate and Relate is a collaborative conversation. What does that mean? That means that if you are listening, if you are viewing, if we are saying anything that you can relate to, see, elevate, relate, anything you can relate to, let us know so we can have a conversation. You may educate us on some things that we need to know. This is always a show that we like to do during our transformation.
Yes, this is basically a porthole to our conversation, like on a daily. So we basically took our phone conversation and we invited you. So now,
Literally though.
boom.
Literally. So let's get started. So we're
All
going to
right.
start off with talking about our personal journeys to
Yes.
us, right?
Our
Or
journey to
to
us. Yes.
me,
The
should I
journey
say?
to me that led to us, right?
Mhm.
So do you want to start and talk about your journey, love? Do you want to?
Sure. All
Okay.
right. So, a little bit about me. I served in the military for the Air Force, to be exact, for 14 years, right? So, 14 years I was in, and we all know that with something like that, it's something where you're serving everything but yourself, right? In addition to that, I spent a lot of my time, in my life being someone, frankly, that I was not, right? I spent a lot of time mirroring what behaviors and mindsets and everything that I thought was acceptable, right? And I didn't truly know who I was because I spent so much time mirroring other people because I couldn't figure out nor accept who I was because I had a period of time with self-esteem issues, things like that. So it was just a whole mess of stuff, right? But there came a time in my military career where I was like, you know what? Nothing, that time where you're like, nothing's making sense anymore. This isn't sitting right with me, and it was after I had my daughter. Things started to look different because she started to get older and it started to mold me and evolve me because I'm like, I have to be a better person for her. I have to be a good example for her. And so I started thinking deeper at that point and thinking about who I am, what I represent, what I actually want out of life. And so I dedicated pretty much a lot of time, to that. And I realized that pretty much all the things that I was doing was not in line with who I was. It was not in line with who I was at a core level and not just, the surface level. So I started to make change. I started reading books and, exploring different, avenues. But the hardest part was making myself open to things. But once I was open, I just started taking new things, taking what I could, recycling what I can't, and now I am here. Ended up getting out of the military. Long story short, I ended up just working for myself, jumping straight into full-time entrepreneurship. It was the smartest, dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. But here I am, 5 years, or actually 6 years later, and I'm still going. How? I'm not sure. I'm not even gonna hold you, but I'm here.
That's all
And
that matters.
so, yeah, but that was something because I literally got out with no money. So you have to really have like your mustard seed of faith has to be a freaking listen, a dang watermelon seed, whatever seed is bigger than that, right? And so
You gotta be
I
magical.
had to have that and be like, you know what, for the first time in your life, you're gonna bet on you. So with that, that comes with a lot of lessons and a lot of, journeys that you learn and that about yourself. And I realized that everything I thought about myself was wrong. So I basically spent the time I've been spending the last 6 years unlearning, redefining, and things like that. And in that process, I've been misunderstood a lot. Just because I've always been a very complex person. I've always been a person that has several layers. I've always been someone that is very, I don't even like to say extroverted because I also realized I wasn't extroverted. I was ambiverted, but I've always been a very energetic and happy person. So people always assume like, oh, she's always happy, but I've dealt with a lot of demons of my own. So I had to meet those demons and start doing hot girl shit with my demons and having a good time, with myself for a while, in and out relationships, all that. But again, I just spent a lot of time getting to know myself and getting to know who I was without distraction. That's what I like to call it. And in that process, I had to work very hard to get people. One, I had to learn to be okay with being misunderstood. Why I found my tribe. But I kind of got in a place where I felt like no one really truly understood me. Like people would understand me on some levels. Then I met my boo Naomi. Naomi understood me, and I'm like, okay, cool. This is great. I was like, but can I just get more people? Like, but I never thought I would find somebody like me. Like I'd be like, oh, okay, you have people I can compliment me, people that get me, but I'm like, there is no me's, and then this one here.
Hi, me. It's me. Listen. Me, I get it.
I basically, it's funny because we met on some business stuff, right? She wanted me to help her with her brand, and I'm like, okay, I'll make a quick dollar. And then as we started talking, we literally sounded like a reflection of each other and everything. Like it's weird, it's scary, but yeah, I'm not gonna go too deep into it. But that's how we got to this point. That's the quickest way I can explain it.
Right, because we're ever evolving, like as you
Right. Yeah,
discover,
yeah. I'll give you
realize
50,
where
50
we are.
minutes of just my story, child.
Oh Lord. So my story is similar, shocking, but not quite the same. So basically for me, I think, I I've had a number of jobs and I've had a number of different paths in my life in terms of like where I wanted to go. I've always been ambitious. I've always been like, I just got to go and get it. I've always just been out to just make the things happen. And my plight, what I found was a lot of the time I had my professional life would be booming, and then my personal life would be the complete opposite. It was like I was living a double life. So it was literally like I could excel all day, had everything together, and my personal life, from relationships to just everything, was completely the opposite. And so it took me a while, and it took a few, failed relationships to realize like what is going on? Like, what am I like? Does my intuition not work? Like for a minute, I was thinking for real, like I didn't, mine was off. Like they didn't give me the whole thing. So I decided like I needed to sit with myself because I needed to figure out why some people can have it all and I wasn't. Like, how do you have a great relationship and then a great job and great family and all these things, and I'm just putting all these pieces together, and the one area I'm thriving in is my professional world. And so I was making that my world and missing out on all these other pieces of who I can be and who I am. So I took a lot of time really just navigating me and doing what we call now shadow work, inner healing. I was having dates with myself. I cut myself off from everybody because it just, I mean, I have degrees, I have this, and I'm still not fulfilled. And I still can't. And then when you meet people and they're like, why are you still single? And you're like, why am I still single? I don't know. Like now you ask yourself all these questions like, what's wrong with me? So I really had to meet myself and figure out what was the issue. Why am I renting and repeating with the people and the circumstances and the situations? And it wasn't just romantic, it was friendships too. Like it was just like there was a certain level of depth I wasn't getting, or I was overexerting and not getting it back, or I was afraid to open up because I was afraid someone would leave if I opened up too much. Like I had all these parts of me that I had to learn where it came from. And so I literally sat for like a solid 2 to 3, 4-ish years, 5 years, and just slowly started to chip away to find myself and figure out where I am, how things are, like why, where did I go wrong? Or what happened that shaped me to be this way? Because is it me, or is it just something that I need to heal and deal with? And so I literally sat and dated myself, and spent time like just going through the motions of trying to figure me out, literally journaling. I love to journal. So I was so disconnected from it. I hadn't journaled since I became a mom. I was like, I don't journal, I don't touch, I don't do any of that stuff. It's just work. And so I started really connecting to who I was and figuring out who I am today, and how do they merge. And I did that for several years, and I learned so much about myself. I started discovering my abandonment issues. I started discovering like codependency issues, and I started realizing different facets of myself. But it helped me to be able to empower myself in those areas because I needed to know first what the root cause of that issue was, or what the root cause of why I wasn't thriving in that area was. And then I needed to figure out, okay, well, how do I fix it? Right? Because we always talk about you got to do the work. What is the work?
Man,
How do you fix it? So I started really figuring out me, like, how do I fix it? And in the midst of that, in the midst of that, I also started realizing I have spiritual gifts. So that kind of threw a whole thing in my like it just kind of turned my world a little bit around, because I'm like, what is this now? Because
Mm-hmm.
then I started discovering, not only as I healed, but that I was more connected. I had these gifts that I was dreaming things, and they were coming together. They're coming to real life. I'm like, this is
Mm-hmm.
real. Like, this is for real. Okay, this is not okay. This is not one off. This is a okay. So I was really struggling with it, because I'm like, well, who can I talk to about it? So then it required me to do more work with myself, because I'm like, well, I can't tell people this stuff. They're gonna think I'm crazy. So I just had to figure me out, and, and really start kind of fine tuning my crazy, because I was like, well, I know crazy adds character, but dang, there's a little too much character now.
Yeah, man.
Too much character. So I had to figure out, one, what the root was, found that out, and then found out some other things along the way about myself. And it actually allowed me to start to trust myself more, because I started to realize that my biggest problem was I didn't trust me. And because I didn't trust me, any relationship, whether it's platonic or romantic or whatever, it was always going to have that undertone of not trusting. And I was always going to subconsciously attract anything that was of distrust. And so I started to understand myself more. And once I started developing my skill and my trust in myself, and dating myself and learning this newer part of who I am, I was able to attract more alignment with my friends, with my jobs, with my just any interaction I had. They became to be more aligned. And so when I reached out to Nana, because I was like, well, I think I'm in this pivot. And at this point, I'm used to pivoting, because my whole life has been one big pivot. So I'm like, well, I think I want to do this, but I don't know nothing about no brands and all this jazz. And I kept seeing her name and her like posts, and I'm like, she says stuff that I say, and people don't say stuff that I say. Like, no one said, like, there are things. I think one day it was one post, and I'll tell you, I don't even know if I told you. There was one post, she was like, everything is figure outable, and that is a household phrase in here, because my life is everything figure outable, because
Everything.
I
I
always
believe
put out. So I saw them like, who told her? Maybe she saw it on my page.
got a camera in my
Like, seriously, who told her to say that? So I reached out to her, and I was just like, you know what, like, can you help me with this? Because the other thing is, when you're talking about trying to brand yourself, there's always you get bombarded with like what your voice is and your tone. And it's like, my tone is unique. It's like different, like it's quirky. And it's hard to find people who meet the quirk without giving you that chat GBT, lingo. It's like, I don't want to deep dive. Like, I'm trying to dig all up in.
You don't want to unleash and unravel your potential.
No, I don't. No, we trying to get to the nitty gritty. You gonna say that? No. So it's just like, there's certain things that I was just like, who could I ask? And so when I saw her, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna ask her. Like, we never met. We never like I didn't know her from a hold on. I was like, I'm just about to do this and just ask her. And I did. And then lo and behold, we like the same people in two different bodies. I'm like, this is so creepy.
And it was funny because it was like apparent immediately. Like the first voice note you said, I was like, she's so extra, just like me. Like, why is she so hyped? I'm like, but I'm hyped too. Let's go. literally, like the rest is like, it literally just started from the first voice note. And it was like after the first note, I was like, you're such a vibe. You're such a vibe too. Like, I don't know. It was crazy.
And the voice note was probably like, a whole hour, because
it was. And it was funny because even on the first one, I was with it. I was like, yeah, yeah. And I said, it was extremely funny, but I think it was like right when like the second voice though hit, I was like, nah, this better be my friend. I don't care. Because I don't beat around the bush. I'm very blunt. I'm like, if you're going to be my friend, let's be friends. Like, I'm not even going to sit here and do the whole thing. I'm like, no, let's be friends. And I think I told you that. I think I was like, yeah, you're going to be my friend. We're going to be friends.
Yes. So it was just it was cool, and I loved it. And I was just like, you know what, this is so dope, and it's nice, and it's great, because sometimes I don't have to like over explain. I have a
Yeah.
habit of jazzy explaining things. So I don't
As
really
you
have to do that because it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I was just doing that. Oh yeah, I was just thinking about that. Or, so
yeah.
it's really nice. The synergy is really dope.
It is. And it's one of those things that you never think that you would ever find to that level too. It's like because even with a lot, like I said, you have a lot of people that can get you and things like that. Like I said, Naomi gets me on a cellular level. But it was like, oh my God, this girl is literally like a clone of me. Like it was great because I always like my boo Naomi, I was like, oh, I just love her. And then I was like, especially with like the spirituality and things like that, because I was kind of getting into it. And at first, I used to be like a conservative, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I switched over, but everybody else I knew, wasn't that. And I'm like, okay, but I'm kind of like a mix. I'm a little extra, and it was just crazy to find somebody that was just like me, because it's like I spent my whole life feeling like there's no like nobody's ever gonna be able to duplicate me. And it's like, dude, it's creepy. Like we even have the same everything. Like it's crazy.
But but we're not. I'm not
We're the
duplicating.
same.
Yeah, we
You
like
know what I'm saying?
not.
Bye.
No, we're unique. We're
See, and I'm
still
not
unique.
even gonna say that because I would have responded the same way. But you know what
Like,
I'm
no,
trying to
you're
say.
still special.
Yes.
but
And that's what we
but
need to talk about is like when you
yeah.
really, really just want to feel special and where you want to feel like, you're a city. Because let's be real, let's talk about community for a second and what community actually looks like. Sorry. Community actually looks like to us, especially where we live in the United States of Ash, otherwise known as America. Um, and in this country of ours, we have a lot of hyper individualism, right? We have a lot of, every man for himself type things. We have a lot of, everybody, like I say, every man for themselves. And, you see it on social media all the time. Don't trust anybody. My circle is a dot, blah, 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 blah.
No
We hear
new
it all
friends.
the time.
No new friends.
Yeah, team no new friends. If you have a friend, if I have a friend, she can't be friends with nobody else. She's only my friend. Things like that. All these other things. I hate it too. And so, we sometimes miss out because a lot of people say that we don't have the village and we don't have the community and we don't have, people around us. But a lot of times we don't have that because we don't open ourselves up to attract it.
Yes, and I think that stems from the healing piece, right? Because you ask so much for these things of like wanting to have someone who's in your corner, wanting to have this community, and then you get it, and then you're nervous about it because now you start projecting past experiences onto that newness, and then you sabotage something that could have been great or something that was what you asked for, even, and for me, that's always been my struggle, is like getting too close and then someone being taken away from me. So it's like, I don't want to do that because then I have to do this whole process all over again. And then I have to, and it's just, it would weigh on me. And so it comes from a space of healing to be able to actually truly open yourself up to not only give the love or give your energy to that person, but also receive it. And I think so much of us, we give so much. I could give you this. I'm bringing this to the table. Okay, I'm your friend. I'm this, that, and the third. But when it comes to actually like receiving it back, like a genuine connection, it's very difficult because there's either some negative past experience, whether it was, a conditional love, a conditional friendship, a conditional whatever, where you had to be reminded of, oh, I did this for you, so this is why I have to do that. It's always that, so it's always this negative thing, soundtrack that plays in the background. And so, for me, it was just like really important to be clear once I did get into a space of healing. What did I want my tribe to look like? What
Right.
did I, because I literally scripted over all of these different things and was just like, I want this. And I remember the first time I met someone who like was similar, but we vibed, and I didn't know them at all. And it was just like, this is possible. Like you can do
Yeah, right.
then it was just like it just like upped the ante because now it's like, okay, now you're really like me now. And we're fighting and we're the same, and this is, and there was no judgment. There's never, I could be myself. Like there's no, like, in all of my randomness. Like,
Yeah. And it's such a beautiful thing, right? And I want that for everybody. And the one thing I can say is I have been blessed with like a circle that, they don't judge me. They see me as I am and all my quirks and everything. But it's like I'm weird, right? I understand that. I'm weird and I'm cool with that because I embrace my weirdness. I know that I have moments where people are like, what are you
yes.
talking about? Like, and so it's very important to be able to, have a space where you can authentically be yourself and not only
Yeah.
make it okay, but you're also celebrated for it, where people love, like, because when I first met her, for example, she kept apologizing for the long notes. I'm like, I didn't even know this. She's like, but this one was 5 minutes long. I'm like, oh, I'm just, because when she's like, I'm just following along listening because I'm actually interested in what you're saying. So I don't care how long it is. I just want to hear what you're saying, and it's great to be that way because especially with us both having ADHD as well, you get so used to masking, right? And not even just with ADHD, us as adults, we mask. We spend a lot of time trying to be, acceptable and to have the acceptable behaviors and be able to follow the protocol of adulthood and be able to like communicate properly and be able to do all of the things that we're supposed to do, right? And it gets hard, it gets draining, and even if you're pulling it off, you still have those moments when you're home and you're by yourself and you're drained.
Yes, you are. We got a question. How do you deal with people that's known you and then they call you the toxic one?
Mm-hmm.
I would say, in all of my spiritual glory, right? Maybe this is the universe's way of separating you so that you can elevate and find a tribe that's more aligned with you. Because just because you've known somebody for a long time doesn't mean they're meant to come on your journey wherever you're going. That season could have passed. It doesn't mean that's your season it's forever and ever. I know we have that BFF thing, but it doesn't mean that that's what it always has to be, especially if you're growing or you're evolving. There's some people that just don't want to evolve. There's some people that don't want to grow and they're comfortable, and that's okay. But it just means that part of your connection that's where and you can hold on to those memories, but you have to move on and make space for what's more aligned for you. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I
Yeah.
would.
Yeah, and same here. I was actually talking to somebody about that earlier today because I had a friend that was very close to me, and then I was just being myself, and you know how it goes with boundaries, where you have friends who tell you have boundaries, don't let her run over you, da 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 da, until it applies to them, right? And then all of a sudden it's like you're toxic, you're this, you're selfish, you're whatever. And when I first dealt with that, it hurt. I'm not gonna lie, it did hurt because I'm like, me? Like, I'm not trying to be that. And the way that I was handled in that situation was I was treated as if I did something, and it was weird to me because I'm like, I didn't do it. I don't think I did anything. And if I did do anything, then like why you couldn't just have a conversation? Like, even if I'm not perfect, I'm someone you can have a conversation with. But that person, not only cut me off like in a time where I needed her a lot, that person blasted me on here and saying all these things and on what are we doing, right? And so I'm not gonna lie, it hurt, it stung. I had a period in time where I did doubt myself, where I did doubt, how you like, well, damn, are they right? What did I miss? Did I miss something about me? Like, what is happening? And I had a time where it did hurt. It hurt for a long time. They always say that friendship breakups can hurt worse than romantic ones, and I 110% know that's true because at that time I was going through a friendship breakup and a romantic breakup at the same time. And this was like one of my best friends. And I'm like, what in the world did I do? But after I cried about it, after I acknowledged and leaned into my feelings of understanding that I was hurt, I did a self-evaluation because guess what? If you're not going to explain to me what happened, I got to explain to me what happened. So I did an evaluation of what, to the best of my knowledge, I could have done. I came back with nothing. So at that point, I released it. And I said, your projections, are not my responsibility. How you perceive me is not my responsibility. I
Absolutely.
am supposed to just be me. And if who I am is not enough, if who I am is toxic, if who I am bothers you or ruins your life in some way, by all means, for the betterment of you and me, cut me off.
Right.
And I realized that it wasn't a big enough topic, I'm like, okay, obviously it wasn't a big enough topic because you didn't bring it to me.
Right.
Personally, you brought it to Facebook, you brought it to everybody else. And then also, if you didn't feel that after years of friendship, I was worth having a conversation with, then it wasn't much of a friendship, right? So what am I really salvaging here? So that's when you ask yourself, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to say? And what am I trying to salvage? And if you're in a situation where you're just being yourself and that person deems that as unacceptable for them, then what is there to really salvage? Because basically they're saying that you at
Are not
your isn't a good fit.
Yeah, and that's fine. You don't force what doesn't fit. You do
Exactly.
not force what does not fit.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, if you don't do it with shoes, don't do it with friends. Okay.
Period.
So
Period.
that's like at the end of the day, because sometimes, honestly, everything happens for a reason. And truly, I feel like, there's always divine interventions when it comes to like people and where you're going and those moments where you're actually moving in a different space or moving in a different direction. Projections of someone else is not a reflection of you. And so
Mm-hmm.
you have to be mindful when you're going through those motions, like, why is this happening? Where am I being elevated to next? Like, that's how I look at things now. Like, when things are not going the way, I'm like, why? There's a reason. Maybe it's not obvious to me in this moment, but there's something coming on the horizon that I'm going to get to, that I need to get to, and that whatever is going on right now, it's too heavy to get there. But I can't bring all of this stuff with me, and
Yep.
so you just have to really be mindful about why things are falling apart, because sometimes things fall apart so better things can fall into place. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing too, that when you're dealing with it and after you process it, truly trusting that everything absolutely happens for a reason and you can't lose anything that's yours. If it's yours, you can't lose it. And when you really embrace that, you become low-key invincible because it's like if
yep,
I can lose it, it's not mine. So what am I losing? I don't want to hold on to something that belongs to someone else. That friendship belongs to someone else that's more aligned. That connection belongs to someone else. I deserve a certain level of connection. I deserve a certain level of respect, reciprocation, and communication. And if you are not giving me those things, then there's nothing to save here. And that's pretty much what I do. So I release what's not mine and I hold on and nurture what is. And something that's mine will have a conversation, right? Something that's mine will actually value me enough to break it out and really talk about it. So
absolutely. Yeah, and the thing is, your community should ultimately be an extension of you, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to spend your time, either you're going to sow some seeds, you're going to nurture weeds, and you got to figure out which is which. And so if you're not gonna, gotta come through, just gotta. I can't help it. It comes through. But it makes sense,
It does. It's just funny.
and you're gonna remember it.
Because you always got
It makes sense. You're gonna remember it. So that's the thing, and you just want to make sure, though, truly, though, really, what are you putting your effort into? Your community should always be an extension of you, so that you have that fostering and nurturing support throughout your journey, throughout wherever you're going.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's very big on the extension of you because like we said, you don't force fit anything.
Yeah,
Anything that you do, because that's the key. That's the major key in all of this. You figure out who you are, you figure out what you value, you bring and what you want out of life, and everything around you should be an extension of that. Especially
absolutely,
the people who you talk to, because whatever good, amazing things you're trying to say to yourself, that person needs to be able to say it to you too, because you want to confirm it with
I'm
yourself.
like, I'm like, oh, and all of my ADHD glory. Oh,
Mhm.
and see, see, and this is what I see. Listen, and I didn't even have.
We flip flop. So I'm like,
But the other thing is too, like, this is what our real conversations is like. So
Mhm.
the other thing, though, is important because we also are conditioned not to share things, right? Like, this is why community is so important, is because
Yep.
when you're like, I'm not going to tell anybody about this great mastermind thing that I don't know what I'm doing and how to do it, I'm not going to
Mm.
tell them. if you don't share with the people that you trust, where do you get your support from? If
Child.
I was like that when it came to this, like branding, like trying to step in outside of my comfort zone into a new space, you need a support group that's going to help carry you through that. Otherwise, you're just going to sit there and stagnate yourself and stress yourself out. People need people. You
Yes.
just need to have the right people, and
Yep.
you have to have the people that are aligned with you. Because imagine if I didn't reach out to Nana and say like, "Oh, I need help with branding." Not only did I get help with branding, but I got a friend, I got a sister, I got a soul twin friend. Okay. So it's great because it's like I got so much more because I'm in an aligned space where I'm able to receive that and I'm able to receive more. It's not just like, oh, I just came for this one little thing. It's like, oh no, but I'm gonna give you this, I'm gonna give you all these things. And it's like, and it's
Mhm.
reciprocated. And so it's very, very, very like fulfilling in a
Mhm.
community to have that. So you don't always have to keep everything a secret. Some people are, oh,
Yeah, I never understood that, right? And I get it. People do what they do, but I 110% don't believe in that. And I make it very known I don't believe that. I'm not a move in silence kind of chick. Like, one, I'm loud, so let's start there. Two, I don't believe that. I feel like when you say that, sometimes you're basically subconsciously telling yourself that the world has more power than me. The haters have more power than I do. If you trust that you have all the power, for your life, if you trust that you are the common denominator for your success and your failures, and that everything begins and ends with you, then what the hell are you scared of? I'm not
right,
saying go and tell all your moves for legal reasons, obviously, but why not have somebody that you can bounce ideas off of? Why not have somebody that you can brainstorm with, especially if the person that you have is just excited about your success as you are? Like,
right.
because I'm that friend, I would cheer for you for brushing a tooth. Okay. Like, yes, you brushed a tooth today. I'm proud of you. Let's make it two tomorrow. Like, you need people like that, because that see you as you are and will celebrate you and understand where you're at. And I never understood that, right? I've never understood where it's like, oh, we have to be by ourselves. We have to have a period of isolation and cut ourselves off from the world. Like, yes, have a little period if you got to heal so you don't hurt anybody else, or whatever you need to do for you. However, don't stay there, right? You have to open yourself up at some point and really understand that the power is in collaboration. The power is in community. The power is having people that are in the fight with you. I can wholeheartedly say that I have a team of people that fight life with me. And I think that's the biggest flex ever. Like, old me wouldn't have said that. But now I feel legit invincible because I have so many people that are rooting for me. There's so many people that genuinely want to see me win. I have so many people that genuinely see the greatness in me, even when I don't see it myself. Because when I'm on the phone with her and I'm talking to her and I'm talking bad about her friend, she's quick to be like, who are you talking to like that? Or I'm on the other end when she gets to talking, and I'm like, I always tell the same thing, sit down and be quiet. And let's phrase this, and you need
Yeah,
that, because you can always learn. There's something to learn from everyone. And that brings us to our next topic of celebrating the diversity in the people that are in your circle, because
absolutely.
it's dope to have people that are just like you, but we are all people. We're all complex. We're all different. Like, and sometimes people feel like, oh, we have to like and do all the same things to be true friends. Absolutely not.
No,
It's great if you have somebody to do that, but even at the core, you're still different, and there's beauty in that.
yes, because you have something to offer, right? You're able to reciprocate knowledge,
Yep.
things you didn't know. Did you know this? Now
Yep.
you're growing together. It allows you to foster a growth within a friendship and within a relationship rather than just feeling like, okay, I'm here, I'm the support, I'm the strong friend. What we talked about, a few weeks ago. It's like those moments you can't grow from them if you're
Yep.
always expending and expend, like you're not gonna do well with that. But the other thing too, on the flip side, is you can celebrate the diversity within your community, but at the same time it can come with triggers, right? And
Mhm.
so there's that point where you're like, okay, this is great, we're all alike and this is awesome.
Yeah.
And then you start looking at things and you're like, wait a minute now. we're too much alike, or there are too many. You start triggering overthinking. Like, I thought you was mad. You quiet. Why you didn't say nothing? You're not talking to like it's it starts to trigger certain things, and it makes you like. I mean, for me, I always value when I meet somebody who is aligned with me, because I know, one, that it's going to be a fulfilling connection, but at the same time, I also know that there are those residual triggers that you're going to have innately that you need to still work through, so that you don't sabotage, so that you don't, because ultimately you can end up really hurting a connection that is a beautiful connection based on your lack of healing or not knowing where to heal. And so I
Right.
always find that when you have aligned connections, they serve a dual purpose of fulfillment, but also for you to have a shining light. Like, you need to
Catalyst
know
too. Mhm.
where do I need to do more healing, because we're always healing, just like we're always evolving. So it's not like, okay, I'm done. Push that button, glad that's done. You're
Yeah.
always you're always going to heal. Things are always going to trigger you. You're always going to be like, oh, wait. And every time there's a change that's more in alignment, that's more different than what you, or closer to where you want to go, even, there's a
Mhm.
trigger, because it's like, you're like, no, 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 we can't do that. So the thing that for me is like, with our connection, it's like I love it so much, but I also am like, sometimes I get triggered as heck, and I'm like, girl, wait a minute. Can we regroup? Can we just like take five? Because time out, and it's, but it's helpful to be able to be aligned in a space where you can talk through it. And I
Mhm.
think that's the beauty of it, because there were times where, if you're in an unhealed space, you may shut down, or you may not talk it through, or you may just toss it away. And so being in that space, it actually shows more of an evolving light for where you can do your own healing, more so than what you've already done.
It's just like when you're in a relationship, like how you're in a bunch of toxic relationships, and then you get in a safe one, and you're like this is nice, but this is weird. Like, wait, we're not arguing 24/7. We're not, and I'm not saying that's the same thing what I experienced, but that's kind of how the triggers work, where it's a positive trigger. It feels negative at the time, but it's actually
Yes.
a positive trigger, because
Yeah.
it's like when you find the people that you're aligned with, they trigger you to elevate, right? And it's like they either trigger it like subconsciously, like just by being themselves, or they intentionally trigger it and say, no, no, I see this in you because I see this in me and you're like me. So therefore you need to go ahead and do this. Or they say, like, and the beauty of having people that are aligned that see you as you are, they also see the greatness in you, right? And they see things that you don't see. It's just like, if you live in Florida and you see Disney World all the time, Disney World is not a big deal, right? But if you got somebody coming from the other side, they're like, oh, this where you're like, yeah, I've seen that a few times. But you need that. You need that fresh eye that can say, oh my God, you have this. Why didn't you don't realize that? You don't see that. And then sometimes it makes you uncomfortable, especially if you are in a space where you're like, dude, I'm already working on enough shit. Like, don't add on to my plate, but they bring something that's necessary that sometimes can put the puzzle pieces together. Where it's
Right.
like, oh man, I never thought of it like that. So there's just so many beautiful moments where you can evolve through growing with somebody else. And that's why I always push community, because it's a different type of growth, because you feel like you're growing holding somebody's hand, meaning that if you fall, that person just has to lean back and catch you, versus if you fall, you're by yourself. And
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing, but like we said, it does trigger some feelings, because you're like, oh man, it's almost like when you're healing too. Like when you're healing and you reach a certain level of healing, you be like, damn, what would my life have looked like if I would have had this the whole time? Or you're
Right.
like, oh, it's weird. It's just a lot of emotions that you never think you would experience meeting somebody that's so much like you.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful thing. But again, community is so important, and everybody has different experiences, and their experiences are going to help you in stuff. Because a lot of things, when I met her, I was like, I don't know what the word to use, but I was more like, she aspired the business side of me. How I'm just like, oh yeah, this is my brand, this is what my brand is. And I aspire her spirituality and her, oneness with herself. And I was like, oh, teach me, grasshopper. So it's like, we just started out with each other. I tell her she's like the perfect version of me spiritually, and she somehow for whatever reason aspires. Because I tell her straight up, I'm fighting for my life, and she's like, "But it's so great," and I'm like, "Okay."
Like, divinely guided. It's divinely guided, girl. She's like, I can't go off vibes. I'm like, it's like relaxed action. So yeah, it's really really nice, and it allows you to keep your sense of individuality too. That hand holding is like you guys are still in your individual body. We're in our individual space. However, I know that there's that extension of me, right? When I can't do the things, and I don't even know that I like. Sometimes you don't even realize you need that little pep talk, that little, hey, what's going on, until you get it, right? Because sometimes you don't know, or you're like me and you're not used to asking for help, and you're like, I can do all the things, and then someone's like, well, I can help you. Let me just take care of it. That's always an attitude. I'm like, I don't know. I need to learn how to. Oh, you got me. I got it. And I'm like, what? Oh yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's a newness, but it's so nice when you have the alignment, honestly, and it allows you guys like your individuality to stand out but still be a part of. It's like it's like being a small piece in a big pie. Like we each have a role in this, but we don't have to be the role in everything, and that makes it so much easier for you to be yourself and not feel like, oh, I gotta do all the things, and like it just takes the pressure off. Like, let me just be weird for 5 minutes and then I'll get my stuff together.
Yeah. It really, really is. And it's like it a lot of times we feel like we have to be this, special one of one type person. It's like, oh, I've learned that through my studies and whatever you want to call it, and healing and whatever, I have learned that when you want to be superior, there is no joy in being superior per se, or feeling superior over anybody. I always call everybody now, we're all equals. We're all equals on different levels. We have our areas where we spike, in different things where we're great in there, but we always are equals. And so when you're having somebody that's just like you're like, well, in a sense, it's like, it does sting a little bit, like, dang, I thought I was, not necessarily superior, but you thought, okay, I was 1-1. And you're like, okay, I may be 1.5. It's fine. So, like you said, it's hard, but you have to remind yourself that it's not about competition. It's not about anything. It's about embracing community. It's about understanding that there is so much value in not doing life alone. I always say you don't get brownie points from the universe from doing this alone. Like, you just don't. The universe doesn't throw you extra stuff like, oh, you better. But it's crazy because we spend life thinking that, acting like
it's insane. It's
like,
insane.
like, oh, I did it by myself, so I deserve a gold star. It's like, oh no, actually, that's not the flex you think it is. Like, and I had to learn that. I used to take pride in being a one-woman show for my business, and I do all the things. I'm the director. I'm the thing. Now I'm like, who can I pay? Somebody, please, because I don't have time. And I realized that when you have somebody or a team or a community or whatever that is alongside fighting with you, then you have time to take. You have time to be able to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, to be able to not loneliness is a real thing.
everybody has unique gifts to offer, and the problem is sometimes when you're looking at everybody else's garden, you're not cultivating your own gift. So it's like when someone does come to you for a gift, you don't even know how it works because you was looking at someone else's garden. So you don't even know how yours is growing. So you have to make sure that you're cultivating your own thing so that you have something unique to offer too. I have my unique gifts that I know that other people may not be able to do because they're unique to me. Just like Nana is great with certain things, and I'm like, I need your help. Like, I can't do this for no one else, and I need you. And that's beautiful to be able to have a safe space and a safe person where you can go and share and say, I genuinely need your help, and I genuinely trust you, and I know that you're genuinely going to receive or give, and it's okay, and it's no ulterior anything. other than I just want to help because we all got to win. And that is an amazing feeling to have. And I think that, I want everybody to feel that and to see that, because it's so powerful when you tap into you and then you're able to offer so much of yourself and genuinely. And it's really nice.
Yeah, because it's like you do the work, right? And you put in the work to be this version of yourself. You put in the work to be better than you were yesterday. You put in the work to be all of these things and heal all of these wounds and unpack all this trauma. And then it's when you have the community that supports you, it's like you're backstage doing all the work, and then you walk on the stage and you have all these people just cheering and crying for you. Like, and it's a beautiful feeling to feel seen, to feel celebrated just as you are, with no extra. You don't have no transactional, nothing. You're enough just as you are. And like she said, I want that for everybody, which is why we are here today to kind of talk about like how I'm not saying that I'm all for attracting it, do the work to attract it, but not saying you have to look for it, but be open to it. Be extremely open to it, because people have so much they can offer you, right? And the people have different mindsets. Every person, from felons to CEOs, learn so much. And it's like everybody has something that you can learn from, good, bad, or in between. But one thing that we also want to bring up too is that we are evolving creatures, right? We are evolving creatures. We are, I always say, I'm not the same person I was 5 minutes ago. I evolve at the speed of an avocado. I know this, right? So it's like, also, while you're embracing that community, also just be aware that you're evolving, and guess what needs to evolve with you? Your community.
Yeah. Your community. Your community has to evolve with you as well. And it's important that you encourage each other, but even in evolving doesn't mean y'all do stuff at the same time. And things, people can be in different phases in the involvement period, just within the same community, right? You can have epiphanies, you can do the things and still be at different paces, and it's okay. It doesn't mean now you need to get a new community because, oh, now they're not doing, the things. It just means that you're evolving in a way that's a little bit faster or a little bit different, or evolving in a different direction, which is fine, and it can change. It can change many times over depending on where you are and what you feel called to do. So be mindful that your community evolves with you, but an evolving community doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fall away from that community just because you're not in the same space. You may have been symbiotic in one way in one point in time. It doesn't mean now all of a sudden, someone's had to change your heart and now they're like, I feel called to do, this. And now it's like, oh, well, I don't do that.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. Everything has to evolve with you. When you elevate, your problems elevate, your community elevates, your mindset elevates, everything shifts. And you have to be open to the shift without putting so much expectation on what it should look like. Because when you start doing that, that's when, it becomes difficult to just be. And I feel like the beauty of aligned connections is when you could just be. And whether that's growing, whether it's having your little temper tantrums, and whatever that looks like, that's super important to be able to have a community to foster that in that space, in that moment, because being seen.
Yeah, and a lot of times people look at it as, I'm evolving, they're not, right? But it could not be that. They could be evolving too, but they're just evolving in a different direction that doesn't complement your evolution anymore. And it doesn't mean that you have to cut them off. Sometimes you just have to kind of downgrade their access, right? Like, a lot of times we are so absolute, we're so extreme that, oh, because it's different now, so I got to cut you off, or we don't talk as much now, so no, not necessarily, because there's still some people, like, I'm that friend where a lot of times I can be distant, but if you need me at any point in time, call me up and I'm in the car. That's it, right? I just really need people to understand that there's levels, right? There's levels to friendships. Just because that person is not doing all the things and saying all the things that you feel that you need at that time doesn't mean they're a bad person. That doesn't mean that there's something that has to necessarily get cut off. They could just be someone that you may need different. I always say that, you may have the person that's the unicorn, but you may, when we say, they could just be a fire breathing dragon. They could be still powerful, but just a different form of powerful that doesn't quite align. Because us as unicorns, we may be trying to, love, light, and carefree, and they may be trying to take over the world. Cool. We still powerful, but in our own right. And that doesn't make you less of a person. It doesn't make you less of an asset. You just don't align with what I'm trying to do. You may still align with me as a person, but it needs to align both ways, but not just me as a person, but what I'm trying to bring to the world, what I'm trying to do with myself, the actions, daily actions I'm trying to do. For example, you could be a very smart person in business and we can have all these different things, but if you're constantly in my ear talking about somebody else, we don't align in that direction. So you can be cool for business advice and we can keep it at that. We can go to networking events together, but don't call me, outside of that, because I'm not trying to hear that.
Right. Oh, okay. Little PSA.
Don't call me with that shit. I get so mad. Like, why do you think I'm a safe space for this? Now I reevaluate myself. Why did you think that was okay?
Yeah, it's hard, and that's the thing. But that's the beauty of like really just knowing where you are, knowing what you have time for. And I always say, if you raise your vibe, you attract your tribe, and that's solely like truly my story, because that's
I'm gonna start doing every time we do a line.
I need like fairy dust, like
you do.
But yeah, it's the truth, because ultimately, and then you definitely don't want to downgrade to a place where you leveled up from, especially when you're like, okay, I did the work. I'm not going to go back there, so be mindful of those things and just know how to bow out without, a lot of times I find that sometimes, your community evolves, it shifts, and there's usually not a big to do about it. It just happens. And so I allow the divine intervention of the universe to do its thing, and I just allow it to focus on my thing, and that's it. And it just works out that way. So embrace the community, evolve with the community. And when you have a community that's aligned, you don't worry about you don't worry about that kind of stuff. It's so crazy, because I'm like, we don't even talk about that kind of stuff. Like, it's,
And I will sit there and have a conversation about nothing, absolutely nothing, before I will be worried about somebody else and what they got going on. Like, I just don't even have a desire. So it's like, for me, that's honestly a non-negotiable to have a conversation for me. The moment either you're talking negative or whatever, I just don't have nothing to say. But one thing I also want to mention is to be mindful of your growth, to really pay attention to yourself, really pay attention to how you're feeling about life, how you're feeling about yourself, how your body is feeling. How are you feeling when you're going around that person? How do you feel when you leave that person? Basically learning to make being present a habit so you can understand when things aren't working and get ahead of it, and don't wait until all things blow up before you're like, oh, wait, that's not a good fit. Or to realize that, you are evolving, and as you evolve, your needs are going to change. So you need to be able to identify those needs, so you're not out here being weird and fake, right? Because you don't want to have sudden needs for something else and you'd be like, oh, I'm done with her, and then you just put her to the side. She's done nothing to you, right? You have to kind of be aware of where you are. So I know that if I'm in a space and I know where I'm trying to go, that this is going to require me, for example, so let's say I'm trying to go get speaking engagements and I'm going all the different places and I want to travel and I want to do all these different things and I'm going to have a busy schedule. If I have somebody with the anxious attachment style that is in their feelings, if I don't text them back in 15 minutes, we're going to have a problem. So even if your core self aligns, but how you do life doesn't align with where I'm going, I may have to, do what I need to do. But that's me being aware of myself and know where I'm trying to go. And even if it's a situation where like, oh, we could probably work it out. But let's say you said something that just that isn't wrong, but it doesn't make me feel good. I need to pay attention to that, because a lot of times those are the first signs to doomsday, right? It's the first times it should be like, oh, okay, and you really need to be able to unpack at that moment how that made you feel. So be very aware and present within yourself that if something happens, that you can unpack it, because that makes a huge deal. Because working on yourself and being mindful and accountable for yourself is also huge for community.
It is. And you have to know what place it's coming from. Is it you projecting a past experience, or is it that person? That's the other
Exactly.
thing. Because someone who, for me, I speak for myself because I had a lot of, projections from the past experiences where,
Mhm.
the friendships were not reciprocated. And, I didn't always have the support or the understanding or people knowing or seeing me truly for who I am. So I was misunderstood a lot of the time. Um, and being mindful of knowing what place that's coming from. Is it you projecting because it's a newness and you're scared that you're going to repeat something? Or is it that person really not being able to evolve and see you for who you are and in the direction that you're moving in? So having
Yep.
that awareness is super key with moving forward with a community. That's a lot.
Yeah. And just being able to look and see what's actually accurate. What is actually accurate in my life at this moment? And what is
Yeah.
emotion? What is trauma? And being able to be honest with yourself. That's another thing. Because I've had that where it's like, oh wow, she over here not doing anything. And I'm like, I was like, wait a second. Then I had to realize that I had to be present in myself. Like, she didn't do anything. Girl, this is a you thing. And it's like I had to process it on my own and be like, oh, that's from that. That's from this, and that. That's why you feel that way. Like, they ain't got nothing to do with her. So you deal with that by yourself and don't even bring that to her door. Like, that's the way it needs to be.
But when it is brought to your door, it's nice because then you can comfort that other person and be like, I did that. Wait, did I do it? Because maybe,
Yeah,
but maybe
maybe
it's you.
you did nothing wrong.
Let me tell you something, because sometimes sis be detached over here in her own world, as we know. Because this world is just, I'm like, oh, it's so nice. People are here, like y'all can see me. So it's one of those things where, sometimes it's like, oh, now that I know that I do it, because sometimes it's a self awareness thing too. Like sometimes you can be doing things out of your old habits from that you brought from how you kind of protected yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to detach because just in case subconsciously, right? And so it's just nice to be able to have the communication and to be able to speak and say, hey, you did this. And it's like, oh, because we literally just did this, literally. So, but it's nice because again, you have that communication, you're able to be aligned, you're able to say, hey, this is what's what. And there's no weirdness afterward. It's not like,
Mhm.
what do you mean? Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Like,
and then the timing matters too, because like I said, I've had moments already with her where it was like one of the moments where I came to her. She thought about it and she was like, oh, I kind of did something wrong. She's like, oh, okay, whatever. She blew it off. But I was like, oh my God, it's accountability where I was like, no, 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 like that was my bad. And I brought it to her because I was like, yo, I was wrong. And I'm sorry. I just want to let it be known that I have acknowledged this and this is what but I try. One thing I've learned too is not to do things in the heat of the moment, because
yeah.
it's like people aren't going to be as receptive to what you have to say. It's just like even with my second little incident where she wasn't responding, like she said she was detached, and I was like, she mad at me? Like, what's going on? But I said, you know what? I'm not going to bring it to her attention, because clearly, if I know her, as if I'm taking time to know her as a person, clearly she's either going through something or she doesn't want to be bothered. That's not why she's not, messaging you. And so I let it go. And I was like, I even told her, I was like, I'm trying to not be weird and give you your space. But this is weird. And then at the end, even when we finally did start talking again, I was like, yeah, I felt some things, but we're not gonna talk about it right now. But it's no, I felt some things. And I think it was like 3 days later, I was like, hey, by the way, this is what I was feeling. And Naomi's laughing. I asked her, I was like, Naomi, am I tripping? She was like, girl.
And I had no idea. I had no idea because when she's
I'm
like,
not going to bring that to you when you're already clearly in heavy thought. I'm not going to add to your plate. So again, it just goes back to being mindful of yourself. And then I realized, like, this is not a her thing. This is a me thing. Like, I'm being a brat right now and I need to chill. So that's what I did. And
and I
so yeah.
had no idea. So when she told me, I'm like, no, I talked to you. Like that's how so aloof I was. So like I was like, no, you got it all wrong. I did
Yeah,
talk
and
to
I
you.
had to screenshot and be like, no, you didn't talk to me. She's like, oh. And so at that time, it was just at that point, it was just a conversation because everything was already passed. We'd already been talking for a couple of days. And I was just like, okay, well, yeah, this happened, by the way. This is how I was feeling. And this is how I resolved it. But I'm just bringing it to your attention. So if I start acting weird again, this is why. What you did. But as I say, as you're evolving, huh?
Yes, but these are the type of conversations you have to have. And this is also what you can expect when you have an aligned friendship, right? Because
Mhm.
it becomes so much more than just friends or just business partners or whatever. It's like this is like a sistership. It's like a soul twin friendship. Like I'm like, whatever this is,
Yes.
whatever this universe, whatever this is. It's otherworldly, and it's because of that though. It's just like you have to be able to have these conversations, and and I didn't feel no type of way. I was like, what? I was not even there, and I was like, oh, I wasn't there. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's beautiful when you can just have an actual conversation, like
Yeah.
really just with the motivation to just figure it out together. Like, okay, where was the disconnect? And then you figure it out and you move on. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it is.
Yeah.
It is
So
like family.
what she said?
I even say it's like family.
It is.
It
Look,
is.
and I told you we like three little Power Rangers. That's why I'm like, yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I'm so grateful for it. But we say all that to say that there is power in community. There is power in having people that understand you. But the key is to understand yourself,
Yes.
and that's where the real work goes in. So basically, you got to understand yourself and then open yourself up to have people who also understand you and embrace those people as you embrace yourself, because you don't want to also be codependent and then be so attached to those people that you give, like we said, and you're not pouring into yourself. You evolve together alongside that person. Like, it shouldn't be nobody holding the other person up. It shouldn't be none of that. You're both standing tall next to each other. That's the
Yeah.
visual here.
You're allowed to be your individual, authentic, amazing self without feeling the need to conform or to do
Mhm.
the things. Just stay true to yourself, because the right people are going to attract. They're going to see you for who
Mhm.
you are, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, and they're not going to shy away, and they're not going to run away. And they're going to embrace you, and they're going to nurture you and love you anyway. And that's the support that you need. So don't sabotage connections, and don't shy away from those connections because you think that it's going to be like the last one,
Yes.
because you've leveled up from the last one, right?
Mhm.
You've leveled up from that, so you have to know that you're attracting something different. And as long as you're staying true to yourself, and as long as you're keeping your vibe high, you're going to attract things that are like wherever you are. What you put out is what you're going to get back. So be mindful of that, not to self-sabotage in the midst of learning and getting to know someone who is in alignment with you and is very similar, because you're still authentic.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people will probably watch and be like, "Well, that's not going to be my reality." I guarantee it can be. You will be shocked because if listen, I would have never thought, I would find somebody so much like me, but here we are, right? And ever since then, like when me doing the work, I found so many people that get me, and so many people that can, like if I'm having an issue, I can get the kind of answer I need. That
Mhm.
it's not that is aligned, because I know that I think a different way. So I don't want people that are going to make me revert back to the version of myself I healed from, like she said. I want somebody that's going to support and confirm the narrative that I'm trying to say. And so it can happen, but again, it always starts with you and how you have to heal the way that you see relationships. You have to heal the way that you actually behave in relationships, being able to respect that person. Because guess what? If you have somebody that's aligned and evolved or whatever, they will put up with no shit. They will leave. So
Mhm.
don't sabotage it by not being present and not being aware of your pitfalls and being accountable for yourself as well.
Yes. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you, guys. But thank you all for joining us. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think we covered like pretty much everything. Yeah, I just want people to really stand in their truth, and raise your vibe to attract your tribe. and then you will be aligned. Boom shakalaka. No.
She had to do it. She wasn't gonna make it through the whole thing.
Whatever.
But thank you guys
I
for
must.
joining. You know, we are on live every other Thursday. So I think the next, she said bars, period. Bars McGee in the room, baby. The next day is March 21st. We will be back at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We will announce the next subject on our page. So please make sure you're following.
We have a YouTube channel, guys. So y'all
Yes.
like, subscribe, all the good things. Hit the notification bell. What do people say? Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'm trying to learn it.
We'll get there. We'll upgrade to have all the razzle dazzle at some point. But yeah, because this was just supposed to be a one-time thing, and here we are on like episode 5. But it's fine. It's all good. So again, thank you guys for growing with us, for evolving with us, and having the conversations, the necessary conversations, and joining us along our journey. We appreciate you.
Yes. So have a good night.
See y'all next time. Bye bye.